The notification sound from my phone cut through the silence of my San Francisco apartment, like a digital dagger to my heart. Congratulations on landing the signal system's position. I stared at the message, my blood turning to ice water in my veins. The sender was Mira Chun, my former colleague, congratulating someone she thought was me. But I had never applied to signal systems. I had turned them down twice because I valued my freedom as a freelance AI consultant. So why was someone celebrating my supposed new job? My hands trembled as I scrolled through my contacts, finding the number I had been avoiding for 3 days. Evan Cross. The man who had swept into my life 6 months ago like a digital hurricane, claiming I was the most brilliant woman he had ever encountered. The man who had made me believe that love and ambition could coexist in the brutal world of Silicon Valley. The man who had apparently stolen my identity to launch his career. I should explain how we met, because the irony still burns like acid in my throat. It was at a networking event called Women Who Code the Future, held in the gleaming conference center of a downtown tech company. I was sitting on a panel discussing AI ethics, wearing my favorite blazer and the confidence that came from years of building machine learning systems that actually worked. The moderator had just asked about bias in algorithmic decision making when I noticed him in the third row. Tall, with perfectly styled dark hair, and eyes that seemed to hang on every word I spoke. He was scribbling notes furiously, nodding along as I explained the importance of diverse training data. After the panel, he approached me with 2 drinks and a smile that should have come with a warning label. "Delilah Hart," he said, extending a craft cocktail toward me. "I have been following your work on neural network transparency for months. That Medium article you wrote about explainable AI? Revolutionary." I felt a flutter of pride mixed with surprise. Most men at these events either ignored the technical content or mansplained my own research back to me. But Evan seemed genuinely interested in the nuances of my work. "Thank you," I replied, accepting the drink. "Are you working in machine learning too?" His expression shifted slightly, and I caught something that might have been calculation flickering behind his eyes. But it vanished so quickly I convinced myself I had imagined it. "I am transitioning into the field," he said smoothly. "Currently in product management, but AI is where the future lives. I would love to learn from someone with your expertise." The conversation flowed like honey. He asked intelligent questions about gradient descent optimization. He laughed at my jokes about debugging neural networks at 3 a.m. When he suggested dinner the following week, I found myself saying yes before my rational brain could intervene. That dinner led to another, and another. Within a month, Evan Cross had become a permanent fixture in my life, filling my evenings with conversations about everything from recursive algorithms to the ethics of autonomous weapons systems. He was charming, ambitious, and genuinely seemed to admire my technical brilliance. In a city where women in tech often felt invisible or constantly undermined, his attention felt like sunlight after years of shadows. "You are the smartest person I know," he would tell me as we walked along the Embarcadero, the San Francisco Bay stretching endlessly before us. "Honestly, Delilah, you could revolutionize this entire industry if you wanted to." I should have noticed that he never talked about his own projects. I should have questioned why someone supposedly passionate about AI never showed me any code he had written. I should have realized that his admiration felt more like hunger than love. But I was lonely. 3 years of freelance consulting had given me financial freedom and technical respect, but it had also isolated me from the collaborative energy I craved. Evan filled that void with his enthusiasm and apparent devotion. So when he mentioned that he was applying for positions at several major tech companies, including Signal Systems, I offered to help without hesitation. Their interview process is brutal. I told him over coffee one morning, my laptop open between us displaying the company website. "They focus heavily on system design and algorithmic thinking. Want me to run through some practice questions with you?" The grateful smile he gave me could have powered the entire Mission District. We spent hours preparing. I walked him through complex system architecture diagrams. I explained the intricacies of distributed computing and load balancing. When he struggled with coding challenges, I broke them down into manageable pieces, guiding him through the logic step by step. "You are an incredible teacher," he said after I helped him understand dynamic programming concepts he had been wrestling with for days. I am so lucky to have you. I felt proud. Useful. Like I was building something meaningful with someone who truly appreciated my knowledge. When Signal Systems requested references, Evan asked if he could list me as a technical mentor. It seemed reasonable. I had been coaching him, after all, and my reputation in the AI community was solid. Of course, I agreed. Just make sure they know you are the candidate, not me. He laughed, pulling me into a kiss that tasted like victory and promises. As if anyone could confuse us, he murmured against my lips. You are in a league of your own, Delilah Hart. 2 weeks later, he got the job. I was genuinely happy for him. We celebrated with expensive champagne at a rooftop restaurant in Soma, the city lights twinkling below us like earthbound stars. Evan was practically glowing with excitement, talking about his new team, his signing bonus, the innovative projects he would be working on. I could not have done this without you, he said, raising his glass in a toast. To the woman who believed in me when I did not believe in myself. The champagne tasted like triumph. I felt like I had helped someone I cared about achieve their dreams. It was a beautiful moment. It was also the last genuinely happy moment we would share. The unraveling began 3 weeks later with that text message from Mira-chan. But the real earthquake hit when I decided to investigate further. I started with social media. Evan had been posting about his new role, sharing insights about machine learning trends and AI implementation strategies. The posts were well written, technically accurate, and completely familiar. Because I had written them. Not these exact posts, but the ideas, the frameworks, the specific examples he was using. They were lifted directly from articles I had published on Medium over the past 2 years. My heart started hammering against my ribs as I opened his LinkedIn profile. There, under his recent activity, was a post about ethical AI development that made my blood freeze. The post was word for word identical to a presentation I had given at a Stanford conference 6 months earlier. Not similar. Not inspired by. Identical. But that was just the beginning. I opened my laptop and began what would become the most important investigation of my career. Using tools I had developed for data analysis projects, I started scraping and cataloging every piece of content Evan had shared since starting at Signal Systems. The pattern was devastating in its clarity. My article about bias in facial recognition systems had become his internal memo about diversity in training data. My GitHub repository for natural language processing had been forked and re-uploaded under his name. Even my jokes about debugging machine learning models had been recycled in his team presentations. But the smoking gun came when I accessed his employee profile through a vulnerability I discovered in Signal Systems' public API. Their security was laughably weak for a company that claimed to specialize in advanced technology solutions. There, in his project portfolio, was something called Cross-Vision AI. According to the description, it was an innovative machine learning framework for ethical decision-making in autonomous systems, developed by Evan Cross during his previous consulting work. I knew Cross-Vision AI intimately, because I had spent 8 months building it for a healthcare startup that wanted to eliminate bias in patient triage algorithms. Every line of code, every neural network architecture, every ethical constraint had come from my mind and my hands. Evan had stolen my life's work and branded it as his own innovation. The rage that filled me was unlike anything I had ever experienced. It was not the hot anger of a moment, but something cold and calculating that settled into my bones like winter fog. I felt violated, betrayed, and simultaneously foolish for having trusted someone who had been systematically robbing me while I slept beside him. But I am not someone who crumbles under betrayal. I am someone who codes solutions to complex problems. And Evan Cross had just become the most complex problem I had ever encountered. I did not confront him. I did not scream or cry or demand explanations. Instead, I smiled and got to work. The beautiful thing about being a data scientist is that everything leaves traces. Every email, every commit, every shared document creates a digital fingerprint that can be tracked, analyzed, and cross-referenced. Evan thought he was clever, but he had no idea he was stealing from someone who could reconstruct his entire deception with algorithmic precision. I started by building a comprehensive database of every piece of intellectual property he had stolen. Using web scraping tools and natural language processing algorithms, I created a system that could identify similarities between his work and mine with mathematical certainty. The timeline was damning. Every major breakthrough in his supposed career development corresponded exactly with content I had created months or years earlier. It was like watching someone wear my skin while claiming they had grown it themselves. But I wanted more than just evidence. I wanted elegance. Working 18-hour days for 2 weeks, I built something I called the Intellectual Integrity Tracker. It was a web application that visualized plagiarism patterns using interactive charts and graphs that even non-technical people could understand. The centerpiece was a timeline that showed the publication dates of my original work alongside Evan's supposedly original contributions. Red lines connected identical passages, shared code snippets, and recycled concepts. The visual impact was undeniable and devastating. I hosted the application on a domain I purchased with cryptocurrency to maintain anonymity. CrossTheLine.tech. The name felt appropriate given Evan's stolen project title. The final step was writing a comprehensive report that laid out the evidence with the cold precision of a legal brief. I documented every instance of plagiarism, every forged collaboration, every lie he had told to build his fraudulent career. The executive summary was a single sentence. This report provides evidence that Evan Cross, currently employed as a senior AI engineer at Signal Systems, has systematically plagiarized the work of Delilah Hart to fraudulently obtain his position and advance his career in the technology industry. I spent hours perfecting the presentation, making sure every claim was backed by irrefutable evidence. This was not about revenge, I told myself. This was about justice. About protecting the integrity of an industry that depended on innovation and trust. When I was satisfied with the accuracy and completeness of my work, I compiled a list of recipients for my digital expose. Signal Systems' Human Resources Department received the first copy, along with a formal complaint about intellectual property theft and fraudulent hiring practices. Their legal department got the second copy, with additional documentation about copyright violations and potential grounds for termination. But I did not stop there. I sent copies to 3 technology journalists who had covered similar cases of plagiarism in the past. I submitted the story to academic integrity organizations that tracked misconduct in STEM fields. I even reached out to the organizers of the Women Who Code conference where Evan and I had met, thinking they should know that their networking event had been used as a hunting ground for intellectual theft. The response was swift and merciless. Within 24 hours, my phone was ringing with calls from reporters who wanted to verify the story. Technology blogs started reaching out for comments. Signal Systems' legal department left 3 voicemails requesting a meeting to discuss my allegations. But the moment that truly satisfied me came when I opened Twitter and saw that CrossTheLine.tech had been shared over 1,000 times. The hashtag intellectual theft was trending in Silicon Valley circles, with hundreds of people sharing their own stories of plagiarism and fraud in the tech industry. My favorite response came from a senior engineer at Google. This is why we need better verification processes for technical claims. Nobody should be able to steal years of someone's work and get rewarded for it. The story exploded across social media like a controlled detonation. Technology news outlets picked it up within hours. By the end of the week, my anonymous report had been featured in Wired, TechCrunch, and The Wall Street Journal. Signal Systems had no choice but to respond publicly. Their statement was carefully worded but unambiguous. We have completed our investigation into allegations of intellectual property violations by one of our employees. Effective immediately, this individual has been terminated from their position. Signal Systems maintains the highest standards of integrity and innovation, and we do not tolerate fraudulent representation of work or qualifications. Evan was destroyed professionally within a single week. His LinkedIn profile disappeared. His Twitter account went dark. The technology community, which thrives on reputation and trust, effectively excommunicated him. He tried to reach out to me, of course. The messages started as apologies and quickly devolved into accusations and threats. Delilah, please call me. I can explain everything. This is not what you think. You are ruining my life. I made mistakes, but I never meant to hurt you. I loved you. How could you do this to someone you claim to care about? You are a vindictive psychopath. I hope you are satisfied with destroying an innocent person." I did not respond to any of them. There was nothing left to say. Evan had made his choices, and now he was experiencing the consequences of those choices. My only regret was that it had taken me so long to discover the truth. The aftermath was more satisfying than I had expected. Not because I enjoyed watching someone suffer, but because justice had been served with the precision and elegance that I brought to all my technical work. 3 months after Evan's termination, I received an unexpected email from Signal Systems. They wanted to hire me as a consultant to help rebuild their reputation and implement better verification processes for intellectual property claims. The irony was delicious. The company that had hired my intellectual thief now wanted to pay me directly for my expertise. And pay they did. My consulting rate was triple what they had been paying Evan, and the contract included stock options that would vest over 2 years. I accepted the offer with professional grace and private satisfaction. My first project was developing an AI-powered system for detecting plagiarism in technical documentation and code repositories. It was sophisticated work that required exactly the kind of expertise Evan had tried to steal from me. The system I built could identify not just direct copying, but also the subtle patterns that indicated when someone was repackaging existing ideas without attribution. It analyzed writing style, technical approach, and even the logical flow of arguments to identify potential intellectual property violations. I called it the Integrity Engine, and it became the foundation for a broader consulting practice focused on ethical AI development and plagiarism detection. Within 6 months, I was speaking at conferences across the country about intellectual property protection in the technology industry. My keynote presentation, titled "Hack the System Before It Hacks You," became one of the most requested talks in Silicon Valley. The presentation always began with the same slide. A simple timeline showing the correlation between my published work and Evan's supposedly original contributions. The audience reaction was always the same. Gasps, followed by murmurs of recognition, followed by sustained applause. "This is not a story about revenge," I would tell them. "This is a story about accountability, about the importance of verifying claims in an industry built on innovation and trust, and about what happens when we allow intellectual theft to go unchallenged." The questions afterward were always intense. People wanted to know how they could protect themselves from similar theft. They asked about legal recourse, about detection methods, about the psychology of plagiarism in competitive environments. But the question that came up most frequently was whether I felt guilty about the severity of Evan's professional destruction. My answer was always the same. I did not destroy Evan Cross's career. I simply made his actions visible. He destroyed his own career the moment he decided to build it on stolen foundations. A year after the Cross the Line.Tech revelation, I received a message that brought the entire experience full circle. It was from a young woman named Zara Okafor, a recent computer science graduate who had been following my work on intellectual property protection. "Ms. Hart," she wrote, "I wanted to thank you for exposing Evan Cross's plagiarism. 6 months ago, I was approached by a man at a networking event who seemed very interested in my machine learning research. He asked detailed questions about my algorithms and requested copies of my code for collaborative purposes. Something about the interaction felt wrong, so I researched him online. When I found articles about your case, I realized he was using the exact same approach Evan had used with you. Your story probably saved me from becoming another victim of intellectual theft. Thank you for your courage in speaking out." That message meant more to me than all the consulting contracts and speaking fees combined, because it proved that my experience had not been meaningless suffering. It had become a protective force for other women in technology. I still maintain the CrossTheLine.Tech website, updating it periodically with new resources about plagiarism detection and intellectual property protection. It has become an unofficial hub for people who want to report suspected cases of intellectual theft in the technology industry. The site includes a comprehensive guide for recognizing the warning signs of someone who might be stealing your work. Excessive interest in your unpublished research. Requests for code samples under the guise of collaboration. questions that seem designed to extract specific technical knowledge, rather than engage in genuine discussion. I also created a database of verified plagiarism cases, allowing researchers and employers to cross-reference suspicious claims against known instances of intellectual theft. It is a resource I wish had existed when I first started working with Evan. The most popular section of the website is the collection of anonymous stories submitted by other victims of intellectual theft. Engineers who discovered their code being used in patents filed by former colleagues. Researchers whose published papers were repackaged as original insights by people they had trusted. Each story reinforces the same truth. Intellectual theft is not a victimless crime. It undermines the entire foundation of innovation and collaboration that makes technological progress possible. But perhaps the most important lesson I learned from my experience with Evan Cross is that betrayal, while painful, can become a catalyst for meaningful change. The violation I experienced drove me to develop systems and resources that have protected dozens of other people from similar exploitation. My consulting practice now focuses exclusively on ethical AI development and intellectual property protection. I work with companies to implement verification processes, conduct audits of technical claims, and provide training on recognizing and preventing plagiarism. The work is deeply satisfying because it allows me to use my technical skills to solve a problem that extends far beyond any individual case of theft. Every system I build, every presentation I give, every consultation I conduct is a small step toward creating a technology industry where innovation is properly attributed and intellectual integrity is valued. Evan Cross taught me that trust, once broken, can never be fully repaired. But he also taught me that the best response to betrayal is not bitterness, but the determination to ensure that others do not suffer the same violation. I never heard from him again after those initial angry messages. Occasionally, I wonder what happened to him, whether he found work in another industry, whether he learned anything from the destruction of his fraudulent career. But mostly, I do not think about Evan Cross at all. He was a chapter in my life, not the entire story. And the chapters that followed have been far more rewarding than anything I experienced during our relationship. The woman who fell for his charm and manipulation was naive and trusting. The woman who exposed his crimes was smart and determined. But the woman I became afterward was something more. A protector, an advocate, and a force for positive change in an industry that desperately needed both accountability and integrity. That transformation was worth every moment of pain, every sleepless night of investigation, every difficult conversation with reporters and lawyers and colleagues who wanted to understand how someone could be so systematically deceived. Because in the end, Evan Cross did not steal my career, or my reputation, or my future. He stole my work, and I made sure the entire world knew it. But what I built afterward was entirely my own, constructed on a foundation of hard-earned wisdom and unshakable integrity. And that is something no one can ever take away from me. The crosstheline.tech domain will remain active as long as I am working in technology. It serves as both a resource and a reminder that intellectual theft has consequences, that victims have power, and that sometimes the best revenge is simply making the truth impossible to ignore. In a world where innovation drives progress and reputation determines opportunity, integrity is not just a moral choice. It is a professional necessity, and anyone who tries to succeed by stealing from others will eventually discover that the internet never forgets, and the technology community never forgives. That is the legacy of my relationship with Evan Cross. Not the betrayal, but the justice that followed. Not the theft, but the protection I built for others. Not the deception, but the truth that ultimately prevailed. And every time I receive a message from someone whose career was saved by the resources I created, I am reminded that sometimes the most painful experiences in our lives become the foundation for our most meaningful contributions to the world. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to our channel for more real-life tales of justice, betrayal, and triumph in the modern workplace. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that matter and creating resources that protect others from similar experiences. Hit that subscribe button and share your own story in the comments below.